I thought it would be fun to do another consult the doctor. I received quite a couple of questions over the past weeks, months actually, and I decided to save them up and record a couple of these. So let's see where we end up. Um, First question. Remember, I'm just writing down timestamps. Can you contaminate an ink by putting ink from the pen back into the bottle? This was a question that came from someone who does not necessarily finish an ink and then puts it back in the bottle. And I think the shortest answer is yes. Yes, you can. There are many ways to contaminate an ink, though, and I've experienced it with B.R.E ink and maybe with other brands as well. But I definitely remember, I think, two B.R.E inks going off. And I don't necessarily think that was because I put ink from the pen back into the bottle. I think it just happened. Don't forget, inks do go off, and this is always I find a bit of a controversial topic, because then there are classic inks like, say, Parker Penman Sapphire, and people still use them, even though they've been discontinued years and years ago. So I can't say, well, this or that is what you should or should not do. I've just come to accept that some inks will go off, and I think the most important message here is don't buy too much ink. It's tempting, and I have been there where I had many, many bottles of ink, but I have found that the problem with that is inks may go off before you actually get to use them up. So I know it's tempting to get every single shade of green or red or purple, orange, whatever you like, but I've come to feel that it's better to just not buy too much. Use what you have. Anyway, that's as far, I think, what I have on that. Now, here's an interesting question. Over the years, has your opinion on Nakaya? I think it's Nakaya, but I'm going to go with the common pronunciation of Nakaya. Has your opinion on Nakaya pens changed over the years? Not really. They're wonderful pens, they're beautiful pens, they're just not for me. I don't particularly like their models. I don't like their size. I just don't like those pens. Bear in mind that this is entirely my opinion, right? And there are other brands that I also just don't like. I just don't like them. They're just not for me. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It's just a matter of preference. I have some pens that some people absolutely hate and despise, and that's perfectly fine. At the end of the day, you purchase those things that make you happy, and Nakaya does not make me happy. It just doesn't. And that's just the way it is. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the brand, but it's just how it is. So I wouldn't read anything into that. It's just a matter of it's not my pens. Okay, this question I thought was fascinating because it touches upon a couple of interesting phenomena. I like to always try a pen before I buy it, but my friends told me that not all sellers allow that, so am I wrong, or should I not be doing this? Well, you should do whatever you want to do. It's certainly the case that not every vendor, and that includes brick and mortar stores, will allow you to try a pen before you buy it. Many brick and mortar stores, in my experience, do, excuse me, but it is certainly true that some will not. And if you go to a pen show, you may find that some vendors allow you to dip a pen to try it out, and others do not. I'm sure you can understand that if someone is trying to sell a, let's say, $12,000 solid gold Waterman pen, then that's never been inked before, then they're probably not going to let you dip it. If it is something a bit more ubiquitous, then people might be more eager to let you dip and try it, and some vendors even then will not allow you to do it. And there are certain, let's say, fancy boutiques that sell precious resin pens that don't allow you to dip anything, for example, and then others even do, and all sometimes it depends on what kind of customer you are. So all that is as maybe. What I would like to point out is that at the end of the day, you may not have an opportunity to dip test everything, but if you do, understand that there are a couple of things to be learned about dip testing pens. First of all, by dipping a fountain pen into bottled ink, you saturate the feed. So if you look at a fountain pen feed, you'll see, I know this doesn't really work very well, but at the bottom of the feed are those sort of grooves, right? Some people call them fins and other people call them combs, it doesn't matter. You have all those grooves. They will fill with ink. And when they are saturated with ink like that, one of the issues is that the pen will typically write very wetly because there's a lot of ink coming out of the feed that way. That may give the impression that a pen is a wet writer, even though in reality it may not be that wet at all. Secondly, I found that that kind of dip testing does not really say much about the performance of the pen. Like I said, they may seem wet, where in reality they're not. But more importantly, certain things are masked that way. For example, if a nib has quite a lot of feedback, you tend to not feel that much when you dip it, simply because, again, the feed is saturated with ink. And as a result, the nib will write very wetly, and because it is so lubricated, you may not feel a certain level of scratchiness. Now, if nib tines are really misaligned, you will pick up on that. You might even be able to see it, which you would not if you were ordering a pen online. So it's certainly nothing, there's nothing wrong with dip testing a pen. Do understand though, and I've experienced this many times, that when you dip test a pen, that is not representative of how the pen writes when you've inked it up the quote-unquote proper way, so with, put ink in it with a cartridge or a converter or piston filled or vacuum filled, whatever that particular filling mechanism is. Just be aware of that, because I've certainly been disappointed. We had a lovely wet pen in a shop and I took it home and then it wrote okay, but not like the way it did when it was dipped. Okay, I'll stop talking about that specific issue now. I think I've made the point, but it's something to be aware of. Okay, the final question I thought was a bit more philosophical, but quite interesting, and abbreviated a little bit. In your mind, what makes for a good pen meet? Especially if you're trying to set up pen meets, how can you give people a good first experience? Do you have any advice for starting a pen club so everyone feels like they have a good time? Well, that's a very broad topic, and what different people like in pen meets is different things. I think the social aspect is something that every time I attend a pen meet, I'm blown away by. It's very interesting to spend time with people who have similar interests as you do, and as a result, it's fun to hang out with those people. Of course, an important aspect of pen meets is trying out pens. I own a couple pens that I own because I learned about them through pen meets. Without that, I would never have learned. A good example, I don't have it within arm's length, unfortunately, but a good example is the Delta Aroma Imperiale. I did not even know that pen existed, but I tried a friend's at a pen meet, and I loved it so much that I pretty much went online and found one when I got back. This is just something that I find exciting about pen meets. You get to try pens or inks or papers that you would not otherwise. And sometimes those are pens that are well beyond your budget, but it's fun to play with, and that I think is fun. And sometimes you just find pens that, like I said, you would not have known about otherwise. And I think that is a lot of fun, in addition to, of course, the social aspect. Now, I will say, as to advice on starting a pen club, we'll do it and advertise it on whatever media there is, whether that's Instagram, but if you don't have a lot of followers, that might not be very helpful. But you can always post something on the Fountain Pen Network, right, which is a forum, international forum on fountain pens, and people may pick that up. I think that's how a lot of pen clubs have started in the digital age. Now, how do you make people feel at home? One thing I found is very important, and I've experienced this in pen meets, I've experienced this at pen shows, but one thing is really important, and that is that everyone feels welcome regardless of their experience level with fountain pens or the pens they own. I've found a number of times that people almost apologetically say things like, well, I only have a TWSBI, or I really only have a Lamy Safari. And in my mind, that is something that you need to address straight away and say that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you have. What matters is that you enjoy it. And here are some pens that you can try, just to try different things. But you really should not be disparaging about what people own. And I found that there definitely are people who are that disparaging, who actually discourage people by making sometimes offhand remarks, but like, oh yeah, well, yeah, it's just a $20 pen. But for some people, $20 pen is something they need to save up for, right? So you should not make people feel that only if you have $500+ pens, you're a real pen lover, and otherwise your opinion doesn't really matter or your pens don't matter. I've seen it happen. I've seen people look around kind of sadly, and it's very discouraging. And that's not an experience that I would want anyone to have. So, if you want to make sure everybody feels welcome, make them feel welcome regardless of what they own. And that, I think, is the biggest pet peeve I have with pen meets. Beyond that, everything will take care of itself. Be social, go to a place, a restaurant, a public place. We have fun with people. Everybody feels relaxed. Everybody can get food or whatever they like, and I think that helps a lot. But that to me really is the most important thing. Make people feel welcome. Don't be discouraging based on what they own. Okay, that's it. If you have any questions that you would like to see answered by someone who may or may not know what they're talking about, then leave them as a comment below. For now, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And again, expect to see a bit more consult the doctors because I got quite a couple of questions saved up. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And see you soon.